Yo, Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we're going to be looking at a really fun dexterity build using a Lightning Nagakiba in our main hand and an offhand Rakshasa's Great Katana. Real quick, we'll just take a look at why this setup is so strong. It's mostly surrounding the very strong roll catch potential that you get with Unsheath, as well as a few other Ashes of War. This is going to be a level 139 build, so we're going to be maximizing for dexterity as much as possible. We are going to get 5 points from Millicent's Prosthesis, which is also going to boost our successive attacks, and we'll get some Ash of War bonuses with the Shard of Alexander, which is really important because we're going to be using several different combos to run pretty good Ashes of War on the Nagakiba. So the first setup we can go for is going to be the offhand into main hand, which is a true combo, and then we can go offhand, main hand, and then follow that up with an Unsheath, and if you time it correctly, you will get a roll catch very consistently. So that's really nice. You can also go for offhand, main hand, and the light attack on Unsheath, which is also very powerful. I don't go for that as much because I really like the extra range and the very high damage you get with the heavy attack of the Unsheath, so I recommend that, but the light attack is also good, especially if you don't think your opponent is going to roll straight back. We also have a Nagakiba that has double slash on it, so same thing, offhand, main hand, and then L2 of double slash, and depending on latency, I find that to be fairly consistent too. It's not a bad idea to delay it just a hair. That can be very good for landing it consistently. And then the last version is going to be the Nagakiba with Sword Dance. So all of these combo quite well as a roll catch into each other. This one, again, I don't think it's a bad idea to delay just a little bit. It's going to be latency dependent, but really just have so many fun options for your Ash of War on the Nagakiba, and I'm sure there are other ones you can run well too. Just the roll catch potential after the true combo is quite high. So that pretty much covers just the basics of the build. Let's go ahead and jump into the showcase. If you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I really would appreciate it. It seems like about 90% of folks that watch my videos are not subscribed, so if you're watching consistently and you like this type of content, it does help me out if you do toss me a subscription. So yeah, let's go ahead and check out the showcase. Alright, so to start things off, we're going to be at Knight's Sacred Ground, and this is going to be a 3v1, kind of a gank situation, I believe. PvE was all cleared out, and we're just in a pretty open, flat area, which is never ideal. We're going to see a Stars of Ruin coming out from one of the Phantoms pretty early on, which means we're going to want to back up. We'd at least like a pillar to help us out. Something to hide behind is going to be quite useful, especially because there's a lot of just hyper armor based weapons from the players that aren't casting, and Taker's Flame in the mix, so all scary things that we need to look out for. It's not a bad idea to run forward up those stairs, and you can kind of use that little building up there as a way to just kind of hide, and you can run around it, and it can be it has some spots that are a little bit difficult to get to, but we decided to run backwards and see if the PvE was all cleared out in the room up here, because oftentimes players will use the closest site of grace and not actually engage the PvE up here. So we're also throwing some sleep pots just to kind of neutralize some of the pressure, and that's definitely helpful. The Stars of Ruin in the background is just really the biggest problem at the moment, so we want to take care of that as quickly as possible, and we're able to land a jumping attack followed up by a running heavy attack with the Nagakiba, and just finish off that player who was definitely not running too much vigor, and that makes this much more manageable. It is still a little bit difficult since both these players have setups that we really need to respect. The hyper armor on both of these setups mean we're going to be stunned for a little while, and the only thing we can really effectively trade with is going to be our offhand Rakshasa's Great Katana. So you can see there we get the hyper armor that we want that allows us to trade, but we are taking a little bit more damage while we're using the Rakshasa's Great Katana, just because that's kind of how it works. It's like a trade-off where you get extra hyper armor, but you also take more damage. So from a balancing perspective, I definitely think that was an interesting design decision, and don't hate it at all. I think it's kind of worth it, and especially because of the high damage Rakshasa's Great Katana does, it feels pretty fair to me. So we're going to back up a little bit. We're just trying to get in hits where we can, and we were hoping to utilize the hyper armor of Weed Cutter, which is insane. It's essentially like unlimited hyper armor, so it's really helpful. We were hoping to grab that player, but before the hyper armor came into effect, we were knocked out of that Ash of War and did need to retreat. We did have another opportunity to use the Weed Cutter, but we do need to back up again as we've kind of lost priority in this situation. However, we do get the true combo in and then have a moment to just go for the chase down. So we didn't go for the Unsheath Ash of War in that moment just because we didn't know if our host here would stun us from behind, and so we felt it was prudent to just kind of continue moving forward and continue that chase down. We do end up getting a nice backstab there, and we try to follow it up with Weed Cutter as a wake up, which I do find to be fairly consistent, but didn't connect there. It seemed a little bit latent, and we were able to just go for the chase down with the Nagakiba. Our next invasion is going to start out in the sunken area in the DLC, and I was super happy about this great bow shot at the beginning. Perfectly knocked down the host and kind of put the Phantom in a bad position where they needed to decide if they wanted to stay up and have like the kind of tactical advantage, or if they wanted to come down and try to protect the host. And they opt to come down to protect the host, and a blue also does hop in here real quick. So we were able to try to, get the players on our terms down here, but that does mean that we do still need to deal with a 3v1. We're able to get off a heal real quick and just kind of neutralize a little bit of the damage that's been done to us, but we need some walls. The number of projectiles coming in from the Phantom is going to be problematic, and we use Weed Cutter just as a way to kind of discourage players from getting too up close and personal. However, this player had a little bit more stamina than I was expecting, and they were able to use the shield to pretty good effect to block a lot of Weed Cutter. So it's also worth noting that that can be parried, and if you do see a round shield in the mix, it's a little bit dangerous to be using Weed Cutter too liberally, but fortunately that blue is not trying to parry us. They were just using it to block the damage, which was pretty effective until it wasn't, and then we had the real quick swap to the Misericord, which allowed us to get in a bit of chip damage as well. It's nice that that Misericord is lightning infused because that's going to go through shields. Even if it's just tiny bits of chip damage, that can be enough to make the difference. And there we did see we were able to finish off the blue before the Phantom was able to heal them. So that worked out quite well, and now we just need to worry about Blind Spot mixed with some of the incantations and spells from the Phantom here. Fortunately, they have no melee option that they're using, so when we go in for a jumping attack while they're swapping over to their offhand weapon, we're able to finish them off. And then we use the true combo. We try to land our Ash of War, however the Unsheath is not perfectly timed for this player. It looked like the tracking was also a little strange. It seemed to go more off to the left than I was expecting, but we go for a Ravioli Step and a light attack, get this player kind of on their back foot. They need to heal, and then here we go for the true combo, and then it seemed like maybe they were trying to alt F4 on us. They stopped real quick, but we still got the finish, so I was very happy about that. Next we have a 3v1, and this one we really wanted to go for the host last. So you will notice at some points that the host is fat rolling. I would say it's probably more optimal to go for the host in this type of situation, especially when they're going to be casting in the back and then you have two hyper armor based weapons from both Phantoms. But for content and for playstyle, I always prefer to go for the host last if I can manage it, and this will be no different. So here we do see the ceiling with the spikes coming in. It catches us, but it also catches one of the other players. That gives us a little time to reset. They're not super interested in investigating this hallway with me, so we can go ahead and drop some rains of arrows onto their heads and just kind of reset a little bit and switch back over to the Nagakiba as we realize we're going to need to pressure up close and personal. They're not going to be interested in dealing with both the dropping ceiling as well as the dropping arrows. So we back up, switch over to the two-handed moveset on the Great Katana, and this is going to be nice because we have access to Weed Cutter. I think I was hoping to press L2 in that moment just a little bit faster. However, the Phantom did get the stun on me as well as the host getting Rot Breath in, so we do need to back up, but a whiffed backstab attempt actually opens up a backstab for us, which we get on the Phantom, and we begin the Weed Cuttering, which I always enjoy and is a good way to just get players to back off. Especially if you aren't dealing with too many spells or just projectiles, I can kind of just say, hey, if you're close to me, you should stop being close to me. We do see a Great Shield coming out from this Phantom here, and that just, I immediately kind of think, okay, I have Star Fists with Royal Knight Resolve on them. That would be a great way to guard break this player, so I'm going to give that a try. So I do pull out the Star Fists, which is a nice way to counter Great Shields, and there's a number of different good ways. Obviously, Kick is just like tried and true classic. It's a great way, especially on an offhand Misericord or a soft swap Misericord. That can be really, really nice. But I do like to mix it up a little bit, and sometimes the fists are just quite effective at that. So we're not actually able to get in the guard break that we want to, and real soon we'll be switching back over to the Nagakiba and just kind of seeing what we can do. We're seeing a lot of the Wrath from afar from that player. It doesn't really do any damage, but it is kind of annoying. We were hoping to get a little bit of HP back from the Warming Stone, but we need to pull back again because of the Rot Breath. We do have some time alone where we used some Warming Stones of our own and just got back to full HP and bait these players in. I don't know if the host was out of heals at this point, but they're playing very, very passively, and that allows me to focus on the two Phantoms here. And here we get a nice guard break on the player with the Great Shield. So the two-handed moveset on the Great Katana, I don't think you should sleep on. There are moments, especially when you're dealing with other players with hyper armor, where it's really going to be more effective than trying to get in, the true combo. I would say the true combo is more useful for just one-on-one situations or duels, which you definitely will encounter in invasions, but definitely in arena, it's where it really shines. So just being sure that you can, swap fluidly between all your different setups and knowing what's going to be appropriate for what instance can be extremely helpful too. So here we get a nice turn and burn. We go for a free aimed hit with the offhand Rakshasa and don't manage to get it to connect. We do get in a Frostpot, but really just approaching these players is going to be pretty much the most difficult thing with this setup. Especially with just random emit forces that come out. But getting a Sleep Pot in, followed up by Rakshasa's Greatsword, is going to be a nice way to get about 500 damage, and then we start pressuring this player backwards, and they don't have a ton of HP. We're trying not to roll down and get hit by the dropping ceiling with the spikes, and they're doing a good job of just getting HP back passively if I'm not too aggressive. Now, I have an idea here where the spot I'm in is not great. I'm also out of FP, so I'm going to use some Starlight Shards. I would like to just reorient myself so I'm not kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I decided to drop down, head up this ladder, and go for a little bit of a sneaky situation here. I didn't know if I would need to shoot them down with the Great Bow, so I swapped over to that, but then swapped back, hoping to get a backstab on this player who looked like they weren't paying attention. They're really not paying attention, so we have time to swap back to the Nagakiba, and we get the full combo. We go for a chase down, and then the falling floor does the finish for us, which I was really hoping would happen, and then it totally worked out exactly as planned. Meanwhile, the other Phantom dies to the PvE up here. There's a little dude with a cannon on its face, so we're happy to see that, and now it's just a one-on-one with a host. So even though none of these players were particularly challenging individually, as a group, especially in these narrow hallways, it's difficult to just kind of make everything come together exactly as you'd like to and stay alive without getting blendered. But now it's just a one-on-one with the host, so we can go for our true combo followed up by Unsheath, and it's GG's. Our next encounter is going to be in the lovely Tower Settlement. If you have watched my channel at all, you know that this is one of my favorite places to invade. We are going to need to look out for the paired swords coming from the host, as well as the backhand blades coming from this Phantom. The blind spot is definitely a little bit of a challenge, but we're going to be able to just kind of back off, go for our true combo, and then they manage to hit the wall with the blind spot, which opens up an opportunity for us to finish them off with the Nagakiba. So yeah, the blind spot is just a little weird. You never really know where you're going to end up when you're using it, and it's hard to kind of guess where your opponent is going to end up too. I'd say the offhand Great Katana is a great way to land a lot of damage against blind spot because it just kind of trades with it well, and the sweeping motion usually ends up where the blind spot ends up. So that works out well, and in the meantime we're able to finish off an AFK blue, which is just so classic. Now we do need to look out for another backhand blade enjoyer. We go for our true combo, followed up with the Unsheath. They're a bit far, so probably a little bit earlier would have been best, and they go really hard with the backhand blade, and some weird latency happens where they're able to get in most of a charged attack before they actually get finished. So interesting moment there. Next up we see a player with the Sword Lance, and that's going to be, it's a pretty high damage weapon if you run it correctly, but we're going to be able to go for our Unsheath and actually get this player down to very low health. They're pretty much on their back foot during the whole engagement, which is really what we'd like to see. And just the jumping light attacks are really nice for catching players. I think the range of the jumping light is deceptive, especially if you delay it a little bit, and it comes out pretty fast too, so that's going to allow us to finish off that Phantom and focus here on the host, we're able to get off our true combo, but not get the Unsheath to connect. So we'll need to come in. And this is probably a good point to discuss kind of the differences between the different Ashes of War you have available. Unsheath, you know, you don't get the same hyper armor and you don't get the multiple swings, and so here we're able to use those multiple swings on a player with a little bit more latency, and also we get some hyper armor in that moment. So we opted to switch over to Sword Dance, and I definitely felt like it was the right thing to do in that moment. I would say Sword Dance is probably on par in terms of how good it is compared to Unsheath, and I would say Double Slash is probably a little bit worse than both of them, but it can be just a really fun way to mix things up, and it's also one of the best for multi-opponent situations. So your ability to catch multiple players at the same time with Double Slash is going to be strongest with that Ash of War compared to the other ones. So this next one, we're going to have a group of 3. We do see a Winged Scythe Enjoyer. I think I was prepared for that player to be slept due to my sleep pot, but they ended up just being able to L2 again, so that means that we are now unable to heal, and we do need to look out for both these players' swings. Fortunately, we're able to hop down the stairs and just kind of get away for a little bit, avoid a lot of incoming damage, heal our blood buildup, and swap our talisman so that once that wears off, we can actually heal and get a decent amount of HP back. So they did not stay too aggressive. I think that would have been the play, especially knowing that I couldn't heal, and we just need to look out for the Madness Snipe coming from the Winged Scythe Enjoyer. Now, the host has kind of backed off entirely, and we kind of know the move that this player is going to go for, so we're able to shut it down pretty easily with just our true combo followed up by Sword Dance, and that turns it into just a one-on-one. Now, we chase down the Kevin as a host comes into the world, but we are able to connect a running heavy attack with the Rakshasa, followed up with the true combo, Sword Dance, and then a light attack for the finish. So really the pressure is very, very strong on this build. You feel that pressure a lot more in the arena than I think in duels or in invasions, but I think it's still absolutely valid to run this in invasions, and still just like a ton of fun. So I think there's going to be so many different offhand Rakshasa based builds I'm going to be running, so I hope you all don't get bored of them, but there's just a ton of stuff that I want to try. I think the synergy between the offhand weapon, the true combo, and the roll catch potential just opens up the door for so many things. You've already seen me run it with the main hand Falx, or if you haven't, you should check out that video. I'll go ahead and post that link to that up in the corner, and yeah, it's just like such an excellent combination, and the fact that you can two-hand your Rakshasa at any given time, use Weed Cutter, which is so strong, is just kind of a testament to, I think, where this is going to be in the meta. It feels like almost like a kind of a Halstock setup, but in reverse, because you have your hyper armor based weapon in your offhand, but you still get like the true combo and everything, and yeah, you also have the potential for even a main hand axe, which would be really nice just because that's going to poise break every single time one-handed. So many good options. We'll see where this type of thing goes, but back to the invasions, we're able to get a player pretty quick. We're not feeling too much pressure from the other players at this point, and it does take us a little while to find where they're at. Fortunately, they do jump down and join the fight, and we're able to focus on this player with Power Stance Greatswords, as well as a Phantom with a Bleed Greatsword. So we're definitely going to need to look out for the bleed procs. We're hoping to get a nice strafe backstab on this player, but one of the Greatswords does actually connect, and we are going to be a little bit concerned about that Ash of War. It's a little bit difficult to roll, and here we were hoping to turn around and heal as the Phantom here went for a jumping attack. However, they just went for a neutral light attack, which we weren't expecting. We're trying to get just enough damage in before the host behind us can poise break us, and fortunately the delayed running attack does the trick. Now, the host does do a good job of just kind of shutting things down with a jumping attack. However, as they go for waves of gold, that allows us to get a backstab, but it's completely nullified by the fact that they get a message appraisal in that moment. So pretty much all their HP comes back. We take a pretty bad trade here as we go for a running heavy. Definitely worth it to respect the Power Stance moveset of this Greatsword, really try to space it. We do see quite a bit of latency kicking in there as well, but it's kind of too little too late, and we get the finish. Now, for our last invasion, this is basically a speed run. We spawn in, immediately see the player going down the elevator, and just knock them back as they try to block the damage. Moving on, we'll begin the duel portion of the showcase. Our first opponent is going to be running a light greatsword on their main hand and a shield in their offhand, which is kind of a cool setup, and we're definitely going to be thinking about guard counters as the Milady has a pretty nice guard counter to it. So they go for a jumping heavy, we space that, and then trade. They go for a parry, which we're kind of prepared for since we delay our Ash of War, and then here we just kind of delay one of our swings again and finish them off. Our next opponent is going to be running a halberd with an offhand hand axe. We are going to be looking to get a little bit of chip damage if we can, since they're running the ritual shield talisman, which does boost their damage negation while their HP is at full. So we go ahead and swap our menu so we can get that set up nicely, and it does work out as we're able to get just a single dagger to negate that extra damage negation. And then here, as they try to back off, they choose not to roll, which is a bold decision, and we finish them off with Unsheath. Our next opponent is going to be running a Hornset cosplay, which is very cool. Definitely enjoy the Falx, and we're going to need to look out for the Ash of War. However, since they are running very low poise, the Nagakiba is going to very consistently poise break, so we'll keep that in mind too. However, we do go for the true combo, followed up with Unsheath as a finisher, and do manage to do a colossal amount of damage. Our next opponent is going to be running Beast Claws, which is a very difficult matchup against the offhand Rakshasa. The hyper armor can really just shut down everything the Beast Claws are doing, and because the Beast Claws are pretty slow, it's just very difficult to not be telegraphed into that trade. And here we can see how effective the offhand Rakshasa is at just shutting everything down. Next, we'll see a player running a two-handed Great Katana, and this is just going to be demonstrating how much you need to respect the priority of this setup. They go to block, and they don't manage to time it correctly and just eat about 1700 damage so fast, and it's over. Our next opponent will have the opportunity to use hyper armor since they are running a colossal sword, but we really just kind of want to backstab them. So we do miss our unsheath attack. An unsheath light attack probably would have been preferable. Here they go for fully charged heavy, which sets us up nicely for a backstab. We do take some damage in the process, but we can follow up our backstab with a Weed Cutter Wake Up, which does finish off this player. Next up, we'll see the power of Sword Dance as a nice roll catch on this build, and we will need to definitely respect the hyper armor as well as tier 3 stun that this player has the option to use if they land a hit. Unfortunately, they do not land a hit, and we can see just how much damage we can do so fast. Our next opponent will also have the advantage of hyper armor as well as tier 3 stun with their colossal weapon. However, we are going to again be trying to use Sword Dance and get that as a roll catch. So we get a nice jumping light in pretty early. That's a nice way to get some initial damage off. We get a nice roll catch with the offhand Great Katana, followed up with Sword Dance, and we do a nice trade for the finish. That's going to conclude the showcase for this build. If you have any questions, definitely let me know, and I hope you have a wonderful day.